I'm Dean Newland, and welcome to Leadovation. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. This podcast is dedicated to the art and science of innovative leadership. Through insightful interviews with industry experts, I bring you cutting-edge strategies and experiences of innovative leadership, helping you think differently, act strategically, and achieve remarkable results. Join me as I provide insights and tools that empower you to make smarter decisions, forge meaningful relationships. Welcome to Leadovation. What if getting laid off wasn't the end of your career, but the beginning of a completely new chapter in your life? In this episode of Leadovation, I talk with Steve Jaffe, author of the book, The Layoff Journey, about the emotional impact of job loss, why layoffs feel like grief, and how people can use those moments to reinvent themselves instead of rushing back into survival mode. We explore resilience, identity, AI-driven career change, and why the ability to adapt may become one of the most important skills of the future for any leader in any industry. So, Steve, good to have you on the show. I am very interested in this topic because most people, when they get laid off, feel like the first thing they got to do is hop right back into the market and, get their resumes updated and start checking out LinkedIn. And there's a sort of a panic mode I'm sensing that as soon as possible, we got to get back into it. But you have a little different tack on that. Would you explain that for people?
Yeah. Thanks, Dean. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. And I'm glad you asked this question because this is, I think, one of the crucial things that people miss is a layoff is a grief event. You will experience and process the grief not unlike you would process grief around maybe the death of a loved one or a divorce. It's on that like Mount Rushmore level of life events that can really have a devastating impact. And if you jump right from your layoff to, I'm going to update my resume, I'm going to start networking, I'm going to try and get job interviews, you leave yourself really unprepared because you're still healing from the event. And when someone asks you, well, tell me why you left your last job, that's going to be difficult for you to answer because you haven't come to terms with it yet. You haven't really grappled with that. So, one of the things I tell people is heal before you hustle. Give yourself a minute to process what you're going through. If for the only reason that this layoff may give you the opportunity to explore, one, if you're on the right career path, if your career and your industry is experiencing contraction, maybe from competitive and other market conditions where this layoff might be just indicative of something that's happening to your industry. And if you try and go get another job in your industry, you may just be opening yourself up to more layoffs. So it may require a pivot. It may give you the opportunity to kind of evaluate that path that you're on and say, does this meet my my goals and my priorities and my passions? So that then when somebody does ask you, why should we hire you? Why do you want this job? You're really well prepared to answer that question because you've done that introspection, you've done that self exploratory work.
A layoff is a traumatic event. You need to go through the grieving process. If you don't go through the grieving process, then from an employer's perspective, you might be coming across as desperate, unprepared, and unprofessional, possibly, because the grief is still following you as you go into these interviews, as you go and have these discussions. So I understand that. Mm-hmm. And I have a follow-up question, but I wanted to, before I do, you've had some experience with this. Mm-hmm. Here's my softball to you. How many times have you been laid off?
Yeah. So I've been laid off 4 times over the course of my career. It's about a 25-year career. And those layoffs kind of bookend the journey in the book and the skills that I learned. So my book is The Layoff Journey from Dismissal to Discovery, Navigating the Stages of Grief After Job Loss. And I begin the book with my first layoff. It was the spring of 2001. I was completely caught off guard. I had fully bought into the myth of meritocracy, where I thought if I worked hard enough and I was smart enough, I would be insulated, I'd be protected from things like a layoff. And it took me a long time to process that grief and that experience. The fourth time I was laid off, it was the summer of 2023, and I sail right through it. It's like water off a duck's back. And I realize as I look across these 4 layoffs over the course of my career that I had learned a set of skills, that I had learned how to manage this grief and manage the experience in a way that it no longer takes me like years to process. I'm able to process it in weeks or months,
Hmm.
and it doesn't hold me back. And as I looked at that, I thought, this would be a valuable thing to share with people. And I originally thought I was laid off with about 20% of my company. And I thought this would be something I'd want to share with the other 20%. And then I thought, well, you know what? If I were to turn it into a book, I could help a lot more people than just the cohort of folks I was laid off with. So that became the impetus of the book. And yeah, and what I'm finding on this book tour is that I thought 4 layoffs was a lot, but I'm coming across
Yeah.
people who have been laid
When I
off
read
five,
that,
six, 7 times.
I'm like, holy crap, 4?
Yeah.
Poor guy. My heart went out to you. But you're saying you're
Thanks.
hearing 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I work in marketing and advertising, and that's a particularly vulnerable industry. And there are some, if you're in technology, software development, the kind of SaaS business model these days, those are industries that you're on the front lines of getting laid off on a regular basis.
okay. So let's, we're going to take one pathway and we're going to skip to others.
Uh,
Grief.
yeah,
Definitely get that.
yeah,
Grief, but also maybe panic, especially if a layoff is a trigger for feeling insecure,
hmm
financially insecure. I have bills to pay. Maybe you get a package. Maybe the package isn't very long. Maybe you get none, and you got to, there's a certain pressure to get back to where you were with respect to your lifestyle. There's that.
yeah,
But the grief piece is what I wanted to kind of dig into a little bit. Do you follow a grief model? Like there's that famous one by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross,
yeah,
The 8 Stages of Grief. Is
yeah,
that
yeah,
your
yeah.
model too? And do you sort of track yourself? Okay, I'm in stage 4 now, and I'm almost at 5. How much do you use that model in your grief process?
Yeah. So, short answer, yes and no. So,
Okay.
first answer, yes, I do mirror Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of grief. Those I think transcend any experience. Like I mentioned, the death of a loved one, a divorce, a layoff fits in that category. And the way that our bodies and our minds process that type of loss are very similar. So you go through those stages of denial and anger and bargaining and negotiation. And then on the backside of this, you have acceptance and reconstruction and renewal. And when I was doing the research for the book and I was really learning more about her approach, it seemed like, yeah, I went through all of those stages and
Hmm.
there's a parallel to them in the layoff experience. So absolutely. The no answer is the grief and the grief processing isn't a linear experience. You don't go from 1 to 2 to 3 and
Hmm.
like you kind of like you don't check it off your list and say, okay, I'm done with denial. Now I'm moving on. Um, there are some days when you may feel all of them, and there are some wonderful days when maybe you don't feel any of them at all. Each individual person in our individual life experience kind of dictates how quickly we move through them. And some may be more impactful than others. I write in my book, I particularly was impacted in the depression stage. That felt more difficult for me than maybe some of the others.
Hmm.
Someone else may have more difficulty in the denial stage or the anger stage. So it's unique to our experience, and it's definitely not linear. It's a path that um, weaves its way kind of through your psyche, your emotional recovery. But there are absolutely coping mechanisms that will help you with any of those stages and help you kind of pass through them in a way that you maybe get through them easier or quicker.
All right. So the second path I want to follow with you on is, what does a layoff cause you to face that you haven't faced before that needs to be faced?
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the first ones for a lot of people is that myth of meritocracy.
Mm,
We're brought up in a way that says if you work hard enough and you're smart enough, you work long hours, you're a loyal employee, sometimes you're a model employee. Um, we think that that's going to insulate us. And when push comes to shove and a company's revenue is down and they're faced with ways to kind of balance the books, if you will, you become a name or a number on a spreadsheet. And all of those things are kind of null and void.
mm,
And when you find yourself on the receiving end of a layoff after maybe you've worked 8, 10 years at a company, maybe you've been the employee of the month, employee of the year, top performing salesperson, and you get let go, it's really difficult to reconcile that. And so that's one of the first things I think that impacts people. Um, I think other things, you immediately think, well, the loss of my paycheck, the loss of my livelihood, it's difficult to make rent and all of those things. But there's also the impact to your community, these people that you worked with that became friends,
mm,
probably spent more time with them than your family.
mm.
The routine, that daily routine of I get up, I go to work. This is how I fill my day. You lose that. Work can become a sense of joy and a sense of pride. Without that work, you're kind of left examining, well, what am I? Who am I? And that's probably one of the difficult things is we associate who we are with our jobs. When we meet people and people say, well, what do you do? It becomes this shorthand for who are you, right? And we reduce ourselves to what it says on our business card, our title and the company that we work for. When they take that business card away, you have to do some work to say, okay, who am I without this job?
Yeah.
All of those things is that self-discovery that you need the time to process before you can kind of re-enter the job market and ask some of those and answer some of those questions that you encounter from potential employers.
It's that thing you just said, Steve, that really I want to underline. It's, who am I without my job? And now all of a sudden I have to answer that question because I don't have the job. So there's something that I want. So the other tack here on this is around the opportunity that a layoff provides, is that self-awareness piece, is that discovery part of your book title.
Uh-huh.
I was just talking to somebody a few days ago, and this was awful, but I knew he was going to get laid off, but he didn't know he was going to get laid off, right? And he kind of suspected that it was coming. And so I had to play neutral because I can't divulge that information. It's confidential. So we had a whole conversation about, that happened, let's just say, take it as a possibility. How could that be an opportunity? And what
Mhm.
would that opportunity look like? And that changed the entire conversation from
Uh,
one to, I'm dreading this conversation that's coming up that might result in me being laid off, to now I'm in the driver's seat and I can assess whether or not I even want to keep this job, or if I do, under what terms. And if
mhm.
I don't, if I do get laid off, I've already got another thought about what I want to do. I mean, so I do think
Yeah.
that you're onto something regarding layoffs are not just a process to go through grief and to prepare yourself for the next endeavor, but it's an opportunity to reassess your life. I think about the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's work. You get a call, proverbial call. Neo in the Matrix gets a call, and all of a sudden your life changes. The call
Yeah.
in this story that you're telling is, hey, hero, you're going into a new direction, and the call is your layoff.
Right.
So it's time to transform if you're willing to do it.
Yeah, you're 100% right. You're 100% right. And the thing about these stages, the first four is the really difficult emotional work. You've got the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the depression. But the last three is where you start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you start to do that internal work and self-discovery around acceptance and reconstruction and renewal. And that's where you say, okay, I may have entered this career in my 20s. Maybe I'm in my 40s or 50s now, and what I thought I was interested in, I'm no longer interested in. Maybe there's contraction in my industry. Maybe I have personal passions and desires and values that don't align with my career, and there are other things that would align. Maybe sometimes your job isn't really that enjoyable, and a
Mm.
layoff can be like a get out of jail free card.
Or you
So
dodged a bullet, as they say.
exactly. Exactly. So you may hate your job and you get laid off with a somewhat decent severance package. That's not a bad proposition where you can
Mhm.
go and springboard into something else or something new. So, the reframing of the experience from like a layoff is this dead end, to a layoff is just simply a detour in your life and in your career. It takes it from the negative to the positive and allows you to see it as an opportunity for renewal and discovery. And I think that's where, if anybody ever comes around on the other side of a layoff and feels like, this may have been a blessing in disguise, it's because they were able to reframe it in their mind and move
Hmm.
forward and move through it in a way where they see it as an opportunity.
It's interesting you mentioned that the surprise was you heard people saying that they've been laid off 7 times, 8 times.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about that from an entrepreneur's perspective who has
Yeah.
clients that come and go. I've been doing this for 30, excuse me. I've
Uh,
been doing this for 32 years. I've probably been laid off a couple hundred times.
right. Right.
Not like in that way, but
Yeah.
the fact that I was with a client, the project was done,
Yep.
we signed, the SOW was completed, we did the work we were supposed to do, and we move on, right? And
Yeah.
each time there's a little bit of a, yeah, I like those people, I'm gonna miss them, and it's not to the degree that you're talking. These are smaller little micro layoffs, right?
Uh-huh.
And another analogy I think of, my brother just did his retirement, and it was like one day he's working, the next day he is retired. It is,
Right.
Friday I worked, Monday I don't. That
Yeah.
to me is like so pulling off the band-aid. That feels like a self-imposed layoff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That you
Yeah. Yeah.
created yourself. But that doesn't mean that he and others who go through retirement don't also go through a grief process.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the same thing for me. I'm in consulting, and you do a project, and things move on, and you're left with, oh, wait a minute. Okay, now I've got to go find another client. Now I've got to go
Yeah,
find another source of income, and
exactly.
that there's that same. Okay, should I be doing this? Do I like doing this? Is this, or should I have a more steady kind of paycheck and a more steady career? And
Yeah.
the same grappling that you do, at any kind of like, not roadblock, but like fork in the road, where,
Mm,
you say, just, okay, I'm going to pause. Is this the right path I should be on? And a lot of times when we're in our careers and we're working 5, 6, maybe 7 days a week, 40, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, we don't have time to pause and do that like
right.
introspection and reflection.
Yeah.
We're on it and we're going forward.
Yeah.
And that's where sometimes a layoff can force that break and that perspective that can sometimes, be valuable.
I'm also seeing that some of the skills that you are probably cover in your book and that you've developed over your career around managing a layoff can be transferred to what you might call resilience or called managing or reacting to change, being agile. These are words that we love to see in leaders because change is constant. There's a great quote that I heard from somebody somewhere that says the speed of change right now is as slow as it's going to be for the rest of our lives. Holy
Mm,
crap. That's a lot of transitions. That's a lot of practice of resilience and reframing and being agile. That
Mhm.
is also, I'm assuming, part of what you have to do when you go through a layoff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I write in the book that if you like your job, just wait because it's going to change. If you like the weather, just wait because it's going to change. Everything
Yes.
in life changes.
Or if you hate
And
your job, just wait, it's going to change.
exactly,
You're
exactly.
right.
So everything is always constantly in movement and in flux. And
Yeah.
your ability to move with that and move through it and accept life on life's terms is the way that you build up that resilience and that grit that you need to kind of, maybe develop a little bit of a thick skin.
Yeah.
Um, but absolutely, the way that people manage the layoff experience is really indicative in kind of their life view and how they approach life. Um, there's a really great anecdote in the book that I like a lot. If you don't mind me sharing, just briefly,
Please.
there's a great story about in the Navy SEALs when you're going to become a Navy SEAL. You go through this really rigorous um, um, kind of training recruitment process, and it's called buds. Buds is like this, maybe it's a 30-day, uh, every rigorous type of training you could imagine. They just really destroy you. And what they found over time, and the retention rate is like maybe 80% of the people fail, 20% of the people succeed. It's really
Mm,
difficult. And these are the best of the best. But what they found is that the people that go through buds that succeed are not the star high school athlete, the quarterback who won every game. It's the person who maybe sat on the bench and maybe didn't
mm,
play, or maybe the quarterback that lost every game. Because what happens is they find that that quarterback that won every game never learned the resilience of loss and was never
mm,
faced with the difficulty of life. So when they encounter it in buds, they just crumble and they drop out. The folks who have lost every game developed resilience, developed coping skills and coping mechanisms to overcome that and keep themselves in the game, so to speak. They're the ones that graduate. And that's a great, I think, analogy of, you know, learning those skills, learning how to bounce back. Um, One of the things I talk about is, you get knocked down, you get back up again. And that's the layoff experience, but it's also when you re-enter the job market, you're going on multiple interviews, you're sending out hundreds of resumes, or you're getting rejected. You got to get yourself back up and back in the game every day. And that takes a lot of resilience.
And this reminds me of parenting.
Mhm.
Like, how do we parent our kids?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the pendulum is swinging a little bit back towards what you just described, that allowing your kids to experience failure versus swooping in and trying to prevent them from experiencing something that, is hard to see as a parent when your child is suffering over something, but it also, in some cases, can be the very thing that helps them grow.
Yeah.
And so then these kids grow up and they go to high school. They get immediate gratification with, TikTok and everything else that they're doing. They communicate virtually versus face to face. It continues to remove them from conflict and remove them from harsh realities of life. And then they hit the job market and you go, oh my gosh, this is a different world.
Right.
And it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. But I can see all sorts of parallels to what you were talking about in other parts of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. 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 Um, what is the right amount of, failure, if you will, for a kid? Um, if you don't mind, maybe that you bring this up,
Please. Yeah.
I have there's a great analogy in the book about, the woman who founded Spanx, the shapewear company.
Okay.
When she was young, her dad would ask her, "What did you fail at today?" And he
Ooh.
encouraged, um, rather than like, let's just focus on like, what are we doing well? Because if you're only doing what you do well, you'll never try anything new because you'll be afraid of failure, right? So he said, what did we fail at today? And she would tell him whatever she failed at. and he would celebrate that. He said, "Great job." Right. So then
That's
when
awesome.
she got older, she became this entrepreneur, and she wasn't afraid of failure because she was
Right.
brought up in this mindset that it's okay to fail. Ultimately, she went forward and created Spanx after everybody told her she couldn't do it and after multiple setbacks. But that was the mindset that was instilled in her, that I love.
I love it. I love it. This is just touching so many different aspects, which is probably one of the beauties. I haven't read your book yet, but one of the beautiful parts of your book is that we could probably make parallel associations like what we are during this conversation.
Mhm,
All right. So let's assume this, Steve. I'm somewhere listening to this interview. I'm driving my car and I just got laid off.
mhm.
It happened today.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm going, all right, what should I do?
yeah.
What's the roadmap now when all of a sudden the roadmap that I was living day in and day out is no longer?
Right,
How do I
right.
proceed?
Yeah. Go home, take a minute, feel the feels. Yeah, you feel crappy. You feel sorry for yourself. Your pity party, all of it is totally normal. It's totally acceptable. Do it and embrace it. Call a friend, be with somebody, share with somebody what the experience is, somebody that you can trust, and somebody that's going to give you a hug and tell you that's going to be okay.
Hmm.
And don't think about the resume. Don't think about anything other than it's okay. This is normal. Everybody goes through this. One of the things I think it's important for people to understand is in 2019, there was a Harris survey that said 40% of all Americans have been laid off at least once. That was in 2019. Okay. A
Before
lot
COVID.
before COVID, before AI, before the layoffs we're seeing now. So it's easy to say maybe at least 50%, one out of every two people has been laid off at least once. Other people have gone through this, right? But people don't talk about it. They don't share their experience. So there's this shame and embarrassment
Mm.
around a layoff. And people can carry that and it can really, really hold you back. The feeling that somehow you did something wrong, you should let go of. You are just a means to an end in terms of the company balancing their books, and reducing headcount is the easiest way to do that. It's easier than increasing sales and increasing their pipeline or speeding up their pipeline. So um, drop that shame and embarrassment. It's totally normal. Everybody's been through this. And don't hold yourself to some sort of standard that like you didn't achieve. Um,
Hmm.
that's that's a quick way to put things into perspective and to not carry like a guilt or like you did something wrong.
I love that. So you really just deal with the feelings, get the support you need, hold off, take a breath, get your head on straight,
Yeah.
get the right frame of reference here so that you can move forward confident and powerful so that, yeah, you don't bring that. It's sort of like the analogy is like you're married or you got a girlfriend, you got a boyfriend, you're in love, you're together for a long time, and then you get dumped. And you're mad and you're upset and you're
Right.
sad and you're revengeful or, whatever you feel. And then the old adage is finish that relationship first
Right.
before you start a new one because you're going to
Yeah.
bring the crap from the old into the new. And I can see the
100%.
same thing can happening. Finish your relationship with your job first. Get over it.
Yeah.
Learn what you need to learn and then move on to the next one so you don't just reproduce what you just came from.
Right. Actually, exactly.
All right, so here's another idea.
Uh-huh.
Human resource people, when they lay you off or when they fire you, whatever you want to call it, is often couched in a way that is non-offensive.
Uh-huh.
We eliminated your job,
Uh-huh.
you
Uh-huh.
know, and so therefore, we love you, you're great, but we're gonna have to let you go, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
The the message that some people have when they hear that is that's bullshit. I
Uh-huh.
was fired
Uh-huh.
and they just don't want to tell me the reasons why, right?
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
that's part of the mind game. But I think that sometimes it is true. Maybe I was let go for cause, but I'm not being told that,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
Um, and so how do you help a person who has maybe some real strong feelings that I think I did blow it, but they didn't tell me why.
Okay, so let's draw a point of distinction. A layoff is a no-fault termination. A layoff, they've eliminated your job. There's redundancies. There's mergers. You didn't do anything wrong. You were in January, you were employee of the month, employee of the year. In July, you lost your job, right? A layoff, you should be eligible for rehire. If you're eligible for rehire, you get that in writing. Then when you're on the job interview, they say, well, are you eligible for rehire? You say yes. That means you weren't fired. There's no red flags. You didn't do anything wrong. If you're fired, you did something wrong. You violated an HR policy. You weren't good at your job. You made mistakes. Whatever it is, if you're fired, you're not eligible for rehire.
Well, when you say not eligible for rehire, what do you mean? But another company, define that term?
Okay, so there's a term. So the HR laws around what they can disclose around an employee are very, very strict. So if you're going through a job interview process and you make it to the final round and they want to call your previous employer, they can ask your previous employer, was he employed? What were the dates of his employment? What was his job title? What were his responsibilities? And is he eligible for rehire? If they say, yes, he's eligible for rehire, he was a great employee. He was laid off. If they call them and they say, is he eligible for rehire? They say no. That's a big red flag that says there was something about him here that he's not welcome back, right?
So rehire represents the parent company.
Yeah.
We wouldn't hire him back because of some issue. Okay,
because of an issue.
So you could still hire that person, but it's obviously you've got a red flag now.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So it's a shorthand for saying he's not a good guy. We let him go because he wasn't great, or we were caught up in a budget exercise. We had to let him go, but he was great. We'd hire him back in a second.
I got it.
So that's the distinction. So if you're fired, they're probably going to tell you because they don't want a lawsuit, and they're going to give you some reason to back up why this is happening.
Yeah, of course.
And when you get laid off, you can think, well, shit, what did I do wrong? And you can play this back in your mind. That's the bargaining stage. And that's where you're thinking all of the what ifs. What if I did this? What if I did that? And you're never going to get answers to those questions. It's best to just let them go. And instead of thinking all of the what ifs, you reframe that. You think, what's next? And instead of looking backwards, you look forwards. And that's, everybody's second guesses. Well, shit. What did I do wrong?
Yeah.
You're never going to know. You're never going to find out. So let go of it.
Yeah. It's an endless loop that you could never, ever get to the answer. And it's just, and it's also prolonging you from moving on.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Before we finish this little conversation, Steve from Southern California, you had mentioned in my conversation with you before we hit the record button that obviously you've been in marketing for a long time and you've got another book at some point you're going to be publishing. And it had to do with your experience in Las Vegas and what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, that whole slogan. And you had some sort of relationship with it. This is a different tack. This is not, now we're on to a different thing. But I just am curious because it's an interesting part of your life. Give us a little bit of preamble to what the book is going to be about and what this whole experience was for you.
Yeah. So I go into this a little bit in this book that is out now, the Layoff Journey. After that big layoff that I told you about in the spring of 2001, I spent some time out of work and I ended up landing in Vegas, of all places. It was the only place I could find a job. And it happened to be on the Las Vegas tourism campaign. This was pre-launch, and they told me, we've got this new campaign we're launching. We need to hire some folks. Your resume looks like it would be a good fit. What do you think about moving to Vegas? I had no idea that the campaign that they told me about was going to be what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So I was there from pretty close to inception of the idea all the way through launch. of the campaign for the first 5 years of its life. And let me tell you, it was a rocket ship. It was probably the most fun. Um, some of the best work to this day, I'm still incredibly proud of. And we came out of the gate and pretty much from day one just lit it up and became part of the zeitgeist of American
Huh.
culture. And we saw Laura Bush on the Jay Leno show talking about, Jay, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. We were on the cover of Time magazine. That kind of dates it a little bit,
Yeah.
being on the cover of Time magazine meaning anything, but at the time it was a pretty big achievement. So it was a really fun time, and I think there's a lot of interesting marketing stories and just general interesting things as far as being one of the most successful ad campaigns in the history of advertising.
That's
The
great.
campaign is on the Madison Avenue Walk of Fame. It's up there with
Wow.
Apple and all these other things. So it was a really, really exciting time, and I think marketing today is a little bit broken, and there's some
Hmm.
lessons there I think people could take from the success of that campaign in terms of helping their marketing be a little bit more successful.
All right. One final question here. Going
Mhm.
back to the previous conversation about being laid off. Um, is there anything that you might say to a person who is now looking for a job that would help them not repeat another layoff? Now, I
Mhm.
realize this is no fault, right? But sometimes we can smell a rat.
Yeah.
Sometimes what we're being offered on the contract, employment contract looks good, but there's a gut feeling like I want the job, I need the job. Uh, Kids are going to college soon. You know, orthodontic bills are coming. I got to get a job. But there's a little sort of voice in your head that says, be careful,
Yeah.
because it reminds you of something that you just came from. Like,
Right. Yeah.
this is another layoff happening
Yeah.
at some point. Could be a year, could be 10 years. Do you ever talk about that in your book? And do you have any recommendations for people who are going back into a job and trying not to repeat the lesson that they just came from?
Yeah. I mean, trust your instinct. Trust that instinct, and whatever it's telling you, listen to it. Um,
Mm,
if you're in an industry that's experiencing contraction, like a lot are now, whether it's from competitive forces, from AI, from Doge, there are a lot of major impacts happening in the marketplace right now. If you're in one of those categories or industries that experiencing contraction and you try and stay in it, you might be setting yourself up for another layoff. So what I
yeah.
tell people is like the old Wayne Gretzky quote, skate to where the puck is going. Look and see where your industry is going and try and shift there. Follow that trend. If the trend is AI, learn AI skills. So you're not replaceable. You're part of that trend that's
Mm,
migrating toward a more AI driven workplace. Um, that is what I would really tell people to focus on. Find a way to either reskill, upskill, or your identify your transferable skills
mm,
and really lean into that. I saw in one of my layoffs, the marketing generalist role was really being just depleted. And there were a lot of new roles in this new category around SaaS called product marketing. And as I looked at my experience, product marketing was the same as any marketing. It just had different words around it and different things. But as I was able to transfer and translate what I had done to be applicable for product marketing, I was able to pivot my career into product marketing, where there was jobs were plentiful, and whenever I went on a job board, I would see hundreds of product marketing openings. That's what I would encourage people to do
mm.
when you're on a job board and you see all of these job postings, but you may not feel like you're the right fit. Find a way to translate those skills in a way that's meaningful to that employer where they can see, okay, this person has done this job before, maybe not with this exact title, but so many skills are transferable these days that um, helping them find the through line is really important.
I love it. I would add one other thing. Make sure that you like the culture of
Yeah.
the company you're going to join. You have an opportunity to interview some of the people that you'd be working with. It feels like a place that you could envision yourself being at for a long time. You like the people, the values seem to be aligned with yours. A lot of times I see people getting jobs because of the position, because of the company, because of the comp package. And then somewhere down the road, we think about what is it going to feel like to work with these people? What's the
Hmm.
culture like? And then
Hmm.
that's what often gets one in trouble, is that the cultures don't align. I've had so many different coaching engagements with a lot of healthcare organizations where they bring in a superstar and then the superstar doesn't fit the culture.
Yeah.
And that's where the rub is often.
Yeah.
So that's just another thought. Steve, really good stuff. I have never seen this tack before. I've seen talked to a lot of people. You're 318, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But I've never had anybody on this show talk specifically about the layoff experience. And I think you've put some really good clarity. You've demystified it. You took away the shame. You made it normal. And you also made those skills to go through this process transferable to change management, to agility, to resilience, hell, even to parenting.
Yeah.
You got a lot going on there. I really appreciate your thoughts and your time on this.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
So last but not least, how
Yeah.
do people find your book? How do people find you?
Thanks for asking. You can find the book anywhere you like to buy books. It's easy to find on Amazon. You can just type in The Layoff Journey. I've got a Kindle version. I just came out with an audiobook version, which is also available on Audible. You can go to thestevejaffe.com or thelayoffjourney.com. You can learn more about me and my book. Happy to connect with anybody on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram, and I've got a blog on Substack. So I've got all the things in all the places. But if you'd like to check out the book, check out Amazon.com. You'll learn more about it. On my website, there's a free chapter you can download, so you can take it for a test drive. And if you enjoy that, then you get the whole thing.
And you do some consulting as well, right?
I do. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very good.
That website is jaffemarketingandstrategy.com. So you can see the other side of what I do on Jaffe Marketing and Strategy.
Excellent. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
If you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to rate and review our show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It helps more people discover Leadervation and this kind of conversation. And if you're looking to strengthen leadership, culture, or team performance in your organization, you can learn more about working with me and Mission Facilitators International at mfileadership.com.